So just really to wrap up, the way we see gold is that it works as an insurance policy in your portfolio. So if you have geopolitical risk, if you have potential wars, if you have uncertainty about economic markets, then people tend to move into gold as a safe haven asset. Again, look at 2008, gold was the only asset class that returned positively. Real assets outperformed financial assets in the 70s, and I believe that this will be the case now for the next 10 years. So I think, I think about where we are now, it's been very similar to where we were in the 70s. You can't print this much money without it having a non-inflationary effect, and as I said earlier, I think we're going to start seeing real inflation coming through. So if you believe that we're sitting at 3.5% today, and you stick another 5 on that, we're going to be over, and then ultimately we'll probably move to 10% inflation. And it's uncorrelated, and by that I mean is that when equities are going up, gold goes up. When equities are going down, gold still tends to move up. So our fund, as I said earlier, gives you direct exposure to gold bullion. So store it in HSBC Bank. Depending on which share class you buy, we can lease your gold out. It doesn't actually leave the vault, but what we're able to do is gain an additional source of income. So not only are you owning the metal, but then you can earn an additional fee income from us leasing out. And I was talking to someone the other day, I said, look, if you are really quite bullish and quite brave, I would buy gold in US dollars at the moment, because I still believe that the gold price has got further to run, but I think the dollar's being oversold, and I think there's space for that to come back. So you'd be making a double trade within gold. And there it is, that's what it is. It's just 100% bullion. It's not paperbacks, there are no equities, there's nothing else within the fund. Precious metals, again, it follows the same principles as the gold fund. It's a third gold, a third silver, and a third platinum. Again, sits in the vault in HSBC in London. We can lease out the silver, we can lease out the gold, we can lease out the platinum, giving you an additional income kicker into the fund. That's what it looks like. So just to wrap up, I believe that real assets are going to outperform financial assets over the next 6 to 8 years, and my belief is based on looking back over historical data, looking at where we are at the moment, as I said, which is reminiscent of the 70s. I believe that we are going to be ultimately moving to a very high inflationary environment, because I said M1 money supply is running at 40%, MO, which is the physical printing of dollar bills, is running at 13%. So, I mean, if you think about that in real terms, there was 40% more money in the system now than there was this time last year. And even more disturbingly for me, what I haven't heard yet is a clear articulation from the Fed, from the Bank of England, from the ECB, is to how they're going to drain all that additional liquidity out of the market. So as global economies begin to recover, you're going to have all this additional money floating around, and ultimately what that's going to do is going to push prices up, and we're already beginning to see that. And as economies return to health, as things get better, we're going to see demand for precious metals, silver and platinum, because of their industrial components. So I just thought I'd put in a number of questions. Is in regards to our fund, we don't physically store the gold, so it's held by HSBC, so there's no counterparty risk within the fund. If you invest with us, we don't see the money, we are purely the manager, so we use a third party to hold the money on your behalf. And again, I think people are nervous about what happened last year and this year with Madoff and some of the other things that are beginning to blow up in regards to the mismanagement of clients' money.
Yeah, considering the beneficiaries, it's actually, I'll explain that afterwards.
Yeah, okay. So that is my argument as to why I believe you should be holding real assets within the portfolio. Are there any questions on the back of that?
You put this in a UK SIP?
Yes. This is an offshore fund, so you can buy it in SIP, yeah.
Maybe if there's maybe one or two other questions, and then again, once Diane makes her presentation or not, if there's any other questions, we can go into together.
So you mentioned that I understand that because of the price increases in natural resources recently, that's going to work its way through the system and be inflationary. But where do you get 3.5% inflation from?
Because if you look at CPI, the way governments around the world measure inflation, they use this measure called CPI, which is a core inflationary measure. But if you actually break it down and look at how they calculate it, what they assume is that you and I go out and buy a new fridge every year, that we go out and buy and spend our money on CDs. And if you strip out that and you put in what I call real, things that we live by, so things like healthcare, things like insurance, they're all beginning to rise. And it's an interesting point that you raise. I mean, this is my view. My view is that we have inflation sitting in our economies at the moment.
Education.
Yeah, education, if you pay for it, that's running at 4.5%. But the CPI, if you look at the CPI, it actually tells us that inflation is running at about 1.5%. So my argument is that once you strip out things like white goods, you don't go and buy a new freezer every year, you don't go and buy a new fridge. But for instance, if you look at rents, they're beginning to rise in the UK. And again, that's not included in CPI measures. So Carterstone, what we've done is we've created our own model to try and get a better bearing on what we believe is, and that's why I talk about real inflation, i.e. latent inflation that's sitting in our economy right now. I mean, the other argument is that, and I'm often challenged on this, that people say, well, aren't we sitting in a deflationary environment? But I haven't actually noticed prices going down. Well, I probably have seen some stabilisation in prices, and I think that has been because what you've had is people running down inventories, or businesses not hiring, businesses holding pay. But we're beginning to, in the UK, we're beginning to see wages are beginning to increase, rents are beginning to increase, and things that you and I buy every day, like insurance, if you pay for school fees, they're